Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. I am your host, Craig DeLuz. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. Before we get started, please remember to like and share this video so that your friends can become our friends and we can all participate in the conversation. Also, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, even if you don't watch us on YouTube, or please like our Facebook page, even if you don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. The key is this, folks, is that we need to get our numbers up because we need to be able to share this information with as many people as possible. The algorithms that these groups set up are not necessarily conducive to people who believe in the Second Amendment. They're seeking to suppress our message. So let's work together to make sure that we get out a message about supporting our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. All right, let's get into today's conversation, shall we? Now, you know, a lot of people think that when you are a pro-Second Amendment group, or when you believe in the Second Amendment, that automatically makes you a conservative group. I cannot tell you the number of times that people confuse FPC with the RNC, with the NRA, and just think that we're all a bunch of right-wing nut jobs. The interesting thing is the Firearms Policy Coalition has gone out of its way to be, in fact, nonpartisan. We have liberals, libertarians, conservatives. I myself am a card-carrying member of the vast right-wing conspiracy. But I've always been one who's believed in the idea of being supportive of values. In this case, it's the Second Amendment. I became a Republican not because I liked Republicans. Most of my friends at the time were Democrats. But I became a Republican because it was the party whose values were most in line with my own. And so, and I've tried to, as much as possible, hold when a Republican strays from those values, I try as much as possible as I can in my own individual way to call them out and hold them accountable. And that's what attracted me to come to work for FPC, is because it's a group that is committed first and foremost to the Second Amendment, not to the Republican Party, not to the Democratic Party, not to the Libertarian Party, but to the Second Amendment and civil rights as they relate in particular to the Second Amendment. Now, that leads us to our topic today, because there are a lot of people out there, and we recognize that President Donald Trump was elected largely because of the support of gun owners, in particular by the supporter groups like the NRA, who spent a lot of time, energy, and effort and resources in order to help get the president elected. But recently, we've noticed that the president has said some things that, well, let's just be honest, were not exactly supportive of our Second Amendment rights. I mean, yeah, okay, we got a Supreme Court justice. That's cool. I 100%. I've liked a lot of the things that he's done. But the question is, you know, some of the things that he has said lately have really raised a question. You know, his support of a ban on firearm sales to any firearm sales to those who are 18 to 20 years old. The regulation of bump stocks through executive fiat, not through the legislative process, but through executive fiat. And now in this particular case where he talks about due process. Now, the first thing that I wanted to just kind of nix in the bud is, and I get this because a lot of people have said this, well, you guys are just taking his statement out of context. And if you see on here, what you're looking at is a meme that we put out that basically pointed out what he said. Now, I wanted to just get rid of that argument. So let's lay out the context. And I'll let you guys watch the video, and then we'll talk about the context of this statement on the flip side.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Well, in the category, you've spoken about it, Mr. President, gun violence restraining orders. They're called. California actually has a version of this. And I think in your meeting with governors earlier this week, individually and as a group, we spoke about states taking steps. But the focus is to literally give families and give local law enforcement additional tools if an individual is reported to be a potential danger to themselves or others. Allow due process so that no one's rights are trampled, but the ability to go to court, obtain an order, and then collect not only the firearms, but any weapons in the possession of that individual.
Or might take the firearms first and then go to court, because that's another system, because a lot of times by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida, he had a lot of firearms. They saw everything. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
All right, so you guys see what happened there. Now, let's get the context correct. So Vice President Pence was talking about a process whereby he's talking about gun violence restraining orders. He compared it to a program we have here in California, which, by the way, there is no due process. There is no due process. You don't go to court. You're not deemed to be a danger to yourself or others. It's an ex parte hearing, which you don't get to be at, right? You don't get to be there. You don't even know about it before they come take your guns. And we all know in California, we all know that there's enough justices out here that are just going to flat out. They're going to approve it and they're going to take your rights. That's how much faith I have in California's judicial system. But having that's a whole nother topic for coffee. But he's talking about a process whereby you go to court, there's due process, and then if it's deemed, then they confiscate the firearms. He was interrupted by the president. The president interrupted him in order to say, well, actually, the other way is you could take the guns first and then do due process second. And he specifically said, I like taking the guns early. That's the context. I don't see how that can be misrepresented. I don't see how that is inconsistent with the way in which the president's position has been presented. Now, so let's stop talking about the fact that the president was taken out of context. No, he wasn't. He specifically talked about due process afterwards. So now let's talk about that. I mean, if you don't get a chance to confront your accuser, and you are going to lose your fundamental rights, and you are going to lose your private property, that is not due process. Due process is you get to face your accuser. You've gone through some sort of formal adjudication process, meaning it's happened. You've gone to a court of law, had a chance to defend yourself, had a chance to present your own evidence. You've had some sort of an evaluation by a mental health professional, something along those lines. That's due. And then if it's still deemed that you are a danger to yourself or others, then that is due process. But saying that we're going to take the rights first and then you get your day in court second is not due process. That's just not. And, you know, the thing is this, and I get it. You know what? This is what he said. It may not be what he winds up doing or supporting, but here's the thing, and this is the important thing, is when you are president of the United States, what you say matters. And I realize that there are a lot of things that President Trump has said that I disagree with. Most of the things he says, I agree with. There's a whole lot of things that he says, though, that I disagree with. I agree with almost everything that he's done. But my issue largely is with the things that he has said. But once again, what you say matters. You know, the economy in the United States is turned around largely based on what the president has said. When he came in, he said he was going to cut regulations, he said that he was going to negotiate trade agreements that would benefit companies that were based here in the United States and hired here in the United States. He talked about cutting taxes. These are all things he talked about well before he did it. He said he was going to do those things, and those were the things that started moving the economy along and increasing confidence. He said what he was going to be doing in relation to illegal immigration early on. And then all of a sudden we saw a dip in the amount of illegal immigration, the number of illegal immigrants that were coming and staying in the United States. Once again, it started with what he said. What you say, Mr. President, matters. So when you say that due process comes second, when other people are talking about due process first, well, it's going to have an impact. When you have a group like the NRA come out and say, we support extreme risk protection orders, but the president, the guy who they helped get elected, says, we want due process afterwards. Well, now guess what? Now everyone's questioning the NRA. That's the position, Mr. President, that you put the NRA in because of what you said. So yes, what you say matters. And I don't care what civil right it is. I don't care if it's free speech. I don't care if it's due process. I don't care if it's private property rights. Due process comes first. You cannot take away a fundamental right without giving someone due process first. And we will always, and that by the way, that's just a whole nother thing. Look, folks, understand this. We will always hold politicians accountable. I don't know why everybody thinks that, well, hey, you know, because President Trump is President Trump, that the Firearms Policy Coalition has his back. No, you know what? We support policy, not politicians. We take positions on policy, not politicians. We have come out and supported Democratic policies that support our Second Amendment rights. And we have come out and we have gone after Republican policies that have gone against our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. If you want to raise a question, ask some of the Republicans right here in the state of California. Ask Eric Linder the position that we took when it came to him and his position on SB 707 when he voted against our ability, when he voted against campus carry here in the state of California, or when he introduced a bill that in its introduced form would have put CCW holders at risk here in the state of California. We came out and we came out against his policy, much to his chagrin. And his attitude was, well, y'all should support it just because, well, I'm a Republican, therefore I'm pro-gun. You know what? Why don't you guys ask Catherine Baker? Ask Catherine Baker what her position is. If we came out against her, she came out with a policy that that would have increased the requirement on those who wanted to taking the firearm safety exam, would have dramatically increased the passage requirement, that increased signage requirements on stores and posting requirements. We came out against it and made her amend her bill because it was bad policy. You can also ask right now. Ask Assemblyman Randy Vopel. Ask him about his position and about where FPC has come out on his particular bill. Ask him about, is FPC supporting his particular measure, which, by the way, further complicates the not unsafe handgun roster, right? Which would make it so that law enforcement is able to, another group of law enforcement, in this case Harbor Police, would be able to purchase handguns that average citizens would not be able to purchase, making them, giving them special rights that us law-abiding citizens, the rest of us, aren't allowed to have. Now, these are Republican politicians that we have held accountable here in the state of California. Now, what would we look like if the President of the United States, due process comes first, not second. You don't take away rights without due process. What would we look like? Because, well, it's Trump. It's Donald Trump. Folks, and this is the other thing, and I know, I'm sorry. I know I'm upsetting some of you, some of my MAGA folks friends out there. Here's the thing, folks. If you cannot, you can't be like the folks who supported Barack Obama were. You can't look at Donald Trump is a human being. You cannot say that Donald Trump or act like Donald Trump can do no wrong, right? You can say, you know what, I disagree with that statement, but I still support the president. You can do that. Believe it or not, yes, you can do that. You can say he was wrong on that one, but I still support him. But you can't say that he's right on that when you know he's wrong. You can't act like he didn't say it or like it doesn't mean anything, because you and I know it does mean something. You and I know that there is meaning behind it and that he ought to be held to account. Because here's the thing, just like what happened with the economics, or just like what's happened with immigration, he's followed through on his word. We're seeing, the introduction of, he's talking about pushing the introduction of tariffs. We've got tax cuts, right? We've seen a reduction in regulation. We've seen increased enforcement with immigration. We've seen increased enforcement of ICE. We now see the Department of Justice is now looking for ways in which to reduce or cut grants to city sanctuary cities. We've seen aggressive enforcement against that sanctuary cities. So when the president says due process second, how are we not supposed to point that out? How are you not supposed to say, you know what? Yes, I may not believe that that's what he's going to do, but that is definitely something worth questioning. Folks, even the people you agree with, even the people we agree with, you got to question them. When they say or do something questionable, you got to call them out. You got to question them. You can do it in a polite manner. You can try and do it in as a supportive a manner as possible, but you still got to call them out. They still have to be held accountable because nobody's perfect. Nobody's 100% on our side. You always have to make sure you're holding people accountable. And I appreciate that you guys call us out and try to hold us accountable. And because we want to try and be accountable to each and every one of you because you are us. And if we're not representing you or representing your values when it comes to the Second Amendment, well then, that's something that we're going to have to fix. But I believe that supporting the Second Amendment as a policy comes above supporting politicians who claim to support the Second Amendment. And that's just one man's take. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, please remember to like and share these videos. Make sure that your friends know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. Stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.